Please note that the public section of the meeting will be recorded and published online for public access after the meeting. Could all attendees switch off their camera and mute their microphone when not speaking? Camera and microphone should only be switched on when you are invited to speak. If you wish to speak, where possible, please use the raise your hand function on the toolbar. Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Bolton and Councillor Graham. And I'll just do a quick roll call now to check who's in attendance for the minute. So if you could answer yes when your name is called, please. Councillor Cox.
Yes.
Councillor Aitchison.
Yes.
Councillor Bell.
Yes.
Councillor Cook.
Yep.
Councillor Grant.
Yes.
Councillor Johnson. Okay. Councillor Latham.
Latham, yes, I'm here.
Sorry, apologies, Latham.
Yeah, that's all right.
Councillor Mayer. Councillor Topping.
I'm here, thank you.
Councillor Yule.
Yes.
And Councillor MacDonald for Councillor Graham.
Yes, I'm here.
And Councillor Mason for Councillor Bolton.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we have some observers. Councillor Forsyth.
Yes, I'm here, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Leslie. Councillor
Seb, are
Leslie.
you?
May have dropped out.
Okay, just for everyone's information, Sebastian had come on early and he just is attending as an observer. Thanks,
Okay,
Emma.
thank you.
Is that you?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that's
okay.
it.
Right, thank you very much. We move on to declaration of members' interest. No indications are coming through, so I take there's no declarations.
Yes, I need to go into the MSP.
Sorry, could you repeat that just for the record?
Tom Mason, I have to declare an interest in that I'm an MSP.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you. No other declarations. Right, we move on to the minute of the previous meeting, 26th of June. Can I ask officers if there's been any change since the issuing of the papers? No comment, so I take it that. So can I ask that the minute is approved, please? I'll take silence as approval, if no other comment.
Please, yeah.
Yep. Just give that a few seconds. No other comments coming through. Thank you. So the minute has been approved. Now we'll move on to item 3 and hand over to Tom to take us through this paper. Thank you. Tom.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose this is quite a nice report to present because it's the approval of the Strategic Development Plan. So quite briefly, we received approval on the 12th of August and we published the plan on the 26th of August. We're now in a period, a 6-week period of legal challenge, which will run out on the 8th of October. When we published the plan, we put a newspaper notice in the P&J, and we also sent emails to everybody who'd made a submission on the plan to make them aware that the plan is now being published. We have a little bit of work to do following the publication of the plan, in that the next steps will require us at some point to place hard copies available for inspection in libraries. We're still monitoring that in terms of the current coronavirus situation, in terms of whether libraries are open and whether it's safe to put certain documents in there. So we'll make a call on that when we're better informed on it. There are 2 other documents that need to be brought back to the authority following publication of the plan, and that's the SEA, the Strategic Environmental Assessment. So it's what's called a post-adoption statement. So that will be presented at the December meeting, and then the delivery programme for the strategic development plan, and that will be presented at the December meeting as well. In terms of the status of the plan, while there have been changes obviously in legislation that we're not required to produce another strategic development plan, it will be in effect, and it will be what's referred to as the strategic part of the development plan up until the Scottish Parliament approves the next national planning framework. So obviously a number of national programmes and strategies have been delayed due to the coronavirus pandemic. So we're not entirely certain of when we'll have a approved national planning framework, but it might be more towards the end of autumn it could be 2022 perhaps, before we have a final national planning framework. So the strategic development plan will be in effect for at least another 18 months, we think. So I can hand back to you now, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions? No indications. Oh yes, I've got Councillor Bell.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Very quick question. So if the plan cannot be publicised in the normal locations, libraries, so forth, will the consultation period be extended, or will you look at alternative methods of actually getting comment to the plan? Thank you.
Tom, or I see Gail, you've raised your hand. I'm not sure if you're coming in here, or is it Tom?
Yeah, no, it was just to be clear that this isn't a consultation stage, so the plan has been approved, but there is a requirement that hard copies go into the library. However, that's been slightly superseded by the information in the coronavirus bill, which says where you would normally have to do hard copies of documents, they can be dealt with electronically. But clearly, we're keen to make sure that the information is as widely available as possible. So it's not a consultation stage. The period of 6 weeks is just for any legal challenge, and that relies on a point of law rather than a point of planning judgment. So it's not a consultation stage.
Thank you. Yeah, okay, that's good. Thanks.
Thank you. I've no other indications, so we'll go with the recommendations, which are, Tom, if you just confirm the recommendations, please.
Sorry, to turn my mic off there, I have to put it back on. Recommendations are to note the approval of the Strategic Development Plan 2020 by Scottish ministers and its subsequent publication. So it's been published on the Sdpa website, so it's available for inspection electronically. Note the period of legal challenge for the Strategic Development Plan runs until the 8th of October 2020. Note that a strategic environmental assessment post-adoption statement will be presented at the December 2020 meeting for the approval of the strategic, or to be approved by the Sdpa, and note that an updated delivery programme will be presented at the 2020 meeting of the Strategic Development Planning Authority.
Thank you, Tom. So we agree with the recommendations.
Agreed.
No. Thank you very much. Now that takes us neatly on to the future direction of the Sdpa. And before I take the paper, there was recommendations, and I just want to read out 2 recommendations to be considered when we discuss this, something I raised at the pre-meeting. So one of the options would be to continue to meet as required and maintain its role in relation to the regional strategic planning matters. 2, to agree there will be no future budget set for the Strategic Development Planning Authority, and that any future costs be shared between the partner authorities. And when we come to the audit report, some of these points will also be clarified. So in terms of the discussion, Tom or Gail, are you taking, which one's taking this? Yes, sure.
Good afternoon, everyone. The paper before you today outlines the legislative changes that remove the requirement to produce a strategic development plan and replace that with a regional spatial strategy. The paper then goes on to outline the cost sharing arrangements that are in place between Aberdeenshire and Aberdeen City Councils, as well as changes to the staffing of the Sdpa, before leading you on to a recommendation to agree the winding up the Strategic Development Plan Authority and to agree to further work by officers of both authorities to consider the future needs and requirements of discharging their functions pertaining to regional spatial strategies. So really, the paper looks to wind up the Sdpa, but also to maintain the excellent collaborative working relationship that we have between our two authorities. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So what I would like to suggest is that we defer this, considering the other points, and we get a clearer position at the next meeting, but agreeing that there would be no costs incurred, which we will agree when we come to the audit report. I just feel at this moment might be slightly premature just to wind everything up. And even if we come forward with proposals, and maybe through consultation between officers and myself and the Vice Chair as a way forward. So I've got Ian, Councillor Yule, raising his hand.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm a tad confused, which is not unusual. At the start of the item, you read out two recommendations, which, unless I've got an old set of papers and it's been updated, are not the ones that are printed in the report, which confused me. And it would be helpful if we could get those in writing. And the second point is to be a question, which may be superfluous now that you're suggesting not winding up at present, is that we've just agreed at item 3, the recommendations C and D, which we agreed there, referred to items being reported to the December meeting of the Sdpa. So presumably on that basis, we can't, or we shouldn't wind up now anyway. But I say I was a wee bit confused, not the right word, but be grateful if what you read out could be circulated electronically, so we can, well, certainly so I can understand what the point you were making. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor, you're not confused at all. I do apologies because it was a last minute thought and discussion we had, but yeah, quite happy for that to be circulated, and you made very good points. Paul, can you come back, please?
Yes, I think what we're talking about just now, Councillor Yule, is that effectively the winding up of the financial arrangements that are in place and the governance arrangements that are in place regarding the Sdpa. We can continue to function as a board and continue to meet to discuss any business. But in terms of the legislation regarding the production of a strategic development plan, there's no longer a requirement for us to produce such a plan, and we'll be transitioning towards a requirement to produce regional spatial strategies. However, the Act doesn't require us to, or the changes to the Act brought forward by the 2019 Act doesn't require us to maintain a strategic development plan authority.
Okay, Councillor Yule, you've raised your hand again. Yes, please come back.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the detailed answer, which is very helpful, and thank you also for circulating the words that you shared earlier. Can I ask, in terms of the words that you shared earlier, which Emma has now circulated, they're headed recommendations. Are these from officers or are they from the chair?
It was a discussion I had, so you could say it's from myself as recommendations, just to keep it simple. I kind of felt it slightly uncomfortable that we just guillotine the Sdpa at this juncture, And I felt it was important that we deferred it till we got clarity in moving forward and whether
Okay.
there is still a role for this group, whether it becomes a sounding board or just some other vehicle. And because time was short, I suggested a paper came back at the next meeting.
And thank you, Chair. And if I may, in your second point about not setting a budget and the costs being shared between the two authorities, that seems entirely reasonable. But presumably, what we can't, as a SDPA, decide ourselves that the cost will be shared between the two authorities. Presumably, we would have to ask the two authorities if they would be prepared to share the costs. I don't think we have the right to demand money from them, which I know is not what you were suggesting, but what you propose seems entirely sensible.
Could I ask officers to respond to the budget bit, please?
So certainly from the City Council point of view, there was a budget. As part of the budget papers, we would be putting forward that we wouldn't be making any further budget contribution to the Sdpa, and that those costs would be absorbed within the development plan budget of strategic place planning. But it would be for each authority to make those arrangements quite properly at their own budget setting processes.
Thank you. And is it Mr. I'm sorry, it's I'm sure it was Councillor Officer Cook. Saw a hand coming up as it's down now.
Yeah, so actually, Mrs. Beattie's last comments basically answered the question I was going to ask. In terms of costs, though, presumably it's basically staff time and not very much else.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have any. We actually don't have any dedicated staff now. So all it is just if something needs printed, you know what it's like. It needs a code. So we just need to be really transparent around about where those monies are.
That's fine. Thanks.
Okay, having confused everybody, are we okay and content with those recommendations to move forward, or do you seek further clarification? I understand it's a last minute change. Take the silence as we go forward with that.
That's fine.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Paul, Councillor Johnston. We now move on to item 5, the annual audit report, and Anne is going to take us through this paper. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so on your agenda you have my annual audit report, and then following on from that you have the audited accounts. So just to follow on from the last item, I think from my perspective, with the change in the planning legislation, the responsibilities on the authority have reduced for the time being, at least. And the level of expenditure that's going through the accounts is pretty low and has been reducing, and in the current financial year 2021 is even less. So I initiated some conversations last year with officers just to think about the winding up the need to have full accounts for the Sdpa. Just largely because it just feels a bit onerous to be doing a full set of local government accounts for what has been quite a low level of spend. And as I say, it's even less now. So what I had been anticipating was that you would continue as a board, but just not have a budget. And there are other examples out there already. There's the city region deal, and there's the roads collaboration, and I'm sure there's a number of others. So in those cases, it's largely just meeting expenses, and partner bodies have in those cases agreed just to absorb the costs. So that was kind of the model that I had in mind, as a way of suggesting that then there wouldn't be a need to continue to have accounts. So that was kind of the context from my side. So in terms of what you have in front of you today, you have the audited accounts for 1920 financial year. So the level of spend through there was 122,000, and that was largely staff costs, 3 or 4 members of staff, and about 25,000 expenditure related with the reporter's examination. And most of that will now be gone, because, as I say, there's no budget being agreed for the 2021 year. So it's fairly clear and simple accounts. So it's an unqualified audit opinion. There were no errors in the accounts and no matters to bring to your attention round about that. The other point I really just wanted to make as well, with COVID-19, all the deadlines for preparation of accounts and the audit of accounts were all extended to provide additional flexibility. But pleased to say we didn't need to take any of that up for the Sdpa. The accounts continued to be prepared by the usual deadlines, which was back in 30th of June. So you saw them at your June meeting, and then the usual sign-off date for the audited accounts is end of September. So we're in line to meet that. Also in your papers, have provided you with a copy of the audit opinion, as I say, unqualified opinion. So we're giving 4 opinions within that statement. There's on the accounts itself, but also on the other documents that are in the annual accounts booklet. So there's the commentary, which provides a bit of a story about the authority for the year. There's the governance statement and the remuneration report and the accounts itself. So it's unqualified, clean opinions on all of those. On page 16 of your papers, we have our main conclusions on the audit, our main key messages, which sets out there the items I've just been talking about. We also have what we call wider scope responsibilities, where we give opinions in line, judgments rather than opinions, in line with our code of audit practice on the governance arrangements in place and on the financial management arrangements in place. So for 1920, we concluded that those were appropriate. So just to come back to where we're going from here. So the accounts were prepared and my report was prepared on the basis of the report you had just had previously on the agenda, and that is that we would be winding up the authority. So on the basis that you're going to defer for the moment, I would need to have some tweaks done to the annual accounts and also to aspects of my own report. But I would be pleased if you're still able to proceed to approve the accounts today on the basis of those tweaks will be made, and the matters will be, the revisions will be concluded with the chair. So as we're operating electronically at the minute, all the accounts are being signed electronically via email. So I would need to, so all the documents that are in front of you have already gone to the people who will be signing. So I'll need to rearrange all of that and reissue fresh documents once the tweaks have been made at the end of today or first thing tomorrow. So if you're comfortable to proceed and approve on that basis. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you very much for your report. Very clear, and it was great to see there was no issues that you found and had to report on. So thanks to the officers who were pulling all that together as well to enable you to do the audit. Thank you very much. So the recommendation is to approve with those small changes following our earlier discussion. Is everybody quite happy and agree with the recommendation? Take silence as yes. There's no indication. So Anne, you have authority to move on, and we'll get the document signed with those minor just tweaks in connection with where we're going as agreed. Thank you very much. So are you covering item 6, the report on the audit accounts? That's because there's 2 items there, 5 and 6. So just, are they both covered?
I think they're both done together, Chair. I don't think there's anything additional that really needs to be said about the accounts itself. I mentioned the expenditure and the different documents that are in there and the opinions on each. So unless there's any questions, I don't think there's anything else that needs to be highlighted.
Thank you, but I'll just give everyone a chance to raise anything. There's no indications. Thank you very much. Move on to item 7. Tom, you're going to take us through the Sdpa bulletin. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I guess the bulletin is an ongoing part of the authorities' monitoring of what's happening with the other local development plans and strategic matters. So to start off, both local development plans have concluded their period of representation in public and achieved quite an amount of interest. Aberdeen City Council had over 1,200 submissions, and Aberdeenshire received over 1,300 submissions, which is, I think, a credit to both LDP teams, given they managed to, publicise the plans and engage with people so much, given the restrictions of the pandemic and not being able to go out and do that face to face. And the two teams are looking to submit their plans for examination with the DPEA in Q1 of 2021. Next on the bulletin is Nestrans 2040, which is the consultation for the regional transport strategy. Some of you may have actually been involved in workshops in the formulation of this, but that's it for consultation at the moment, which concludes on the 16th of October, and all the documentation relevant to that is available online on Nestrans website. An update on MPF4, I think it was probably September, October of last year. They were asking for calls for evidence and submissions of ideas for MPF4, and that has been analysed and synthesised and placed on the Scottish Government's website. So the hyperlink for that is in the bulletin. The work for MPF4 is ongoing. At the moment, they're currently consulting on a paper on housing policy, and that is being reviewed by both local development plan teams for both councils and both housing teams for both councils as well. In terms of strategic transport projects, an update from Transport Scotland is that they are working on a COVID transport plan at the moment, but because the situation is evolving so quickly, it seems to be a challenge for them to arrive at a finalised plan, and that the effect of the pandemic has had a knock-on effect on a number of other high-level Scottish Government documents, such as, well, I think I mentioned it earlier on, MPF4 and Strategic Transport Projects Review 2. When we hear a bit more about it, we'll obviously report back to you again, but it seems that just the current circumstances have caused delays in these quite large strategic projects, or resulted in the need for maybe some tweaking to them, because we're in a new situation. So that's pretty much everything covered in the bulletin.
Thank you, Tom. As we enter into uncharted waters and moving forward, it's going to be an interesting future, how we address some of the key issues that in terms of transport and other the economic drivers. Anyway, we've got 2 or 3 hands popping up. So Councillor Yule and then Councillor Mason. Councillor Yule.
Thanks, Chair. Not so much a question, just a comment. I wanted to say that I've always found the bulletins very helpful in providing I wouldn't say idiot's guide, that's not fair, but an easy to read guide is probably for on all strategic development related issues, and I found that useful over the years, and whatever the future may hold for the Sdpa or its successor, I hope that a bulletin, a similar bulletin, could be part of that, because I certainly have found it of value, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. That's very useful. Yes, I likewise just echo your. It was good to find out what's going on across the borders, and yeah, it was very useful and always quite easy to follow. So thanks for your comments. Tom, do you wish to come in?
Yes, Chair, I just wondered if anybody has an estimation as to how much the plans are delayed by government in going forward. At the moment, we've had the pandemic for 6 months. Are we actually delayed 6 months, or are we losing greater quantity of that or less as we go on? Anybody got any guesses on that?
Gil? So you're desperate to come in and answer that. You've got the crystal ball.
Well, I'm desperate to come in and give a non-answer. Really, I think like everyone, some of those government plans have been sort of indefinitely delayed. We've certainly had communication from the chief planner saying that, you know, MPF4 is pushed back by probably a year, because it was supposed to be in a draft form in autumn of this year, and it's likely to be autumn of next year. But as it's really sort of a developing situation, I think it's probably unreasonable to have a fixed date, but it certainly has a big impact, particularly around the more collaborative pieces of work.
Tom, do you wish to come back?
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether the government has indicated that they're going to maintain information on targets there, or are we in a situation of indefinitely delayed? I mean, it's a bit worrying if these things are delayed, you know, just slowly disappear into the distance.
Yeah.
I think what's been really helpful is just the commitment, Councillor Mason, to ensuring that you know, planning as much as possible can still continue. So whilst there might be some delays, certainly we're not getting the view that it's going to be, you know, it's not going to happen. It's just a case of where these sort of collaborative pieces of work have to be pulled together. It is proving quite a challenge, and like every other organisation, I assume government have got lots of people redirected to other areas at the moment, and that certainly was an issue over the first few months.
Thank you for that. I mean, I just hope it's going to be sooner rather than later. I don't want to be in my box before it actually comes out. It'd be nice to know these plans are continuing. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, no other indications. Tom, it'd be great if you could have something in preparation for the next meeting anyway, in terms of the bulletin, because I think certainly a strong indication that very much welcomed.
No, happy to do that. Happy to keep it going. It's good for ourselves. Keep track of what's going on out there. Yep.
Thank you very much. Right, that brings us to item 8, the last item on the agenda, which is the date of the next meeting. It's still scheduled for the 11th of December, 2 p.m. It states Woodall House, but I would imagine the way things are going, it'll be in the same format as today. So on that, unless there's anything else that I've missed or important matters, I think can I thank all the officers for their contribution, and I thank all those who attended today, and look forward to seeing you in December.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thanks.